All right, so welcome once again to another episode of this tutorial. I'm currently eating, so bear with me. I'm going to be talking a little bit slow, so bear with me. And if you want to eat, maybe you can come and eat. All right, so yesterday we looked at component and templating, and we said that React affords us the ability to build pages from other components. Yeah, so today we're going to be creating our very first component, and it's going to be a navbar component. And we're just going to follow this design. Now we're going to be creating three different navbar components with three different layouts. So this is going to be our first layout. We're going to have a logo on the left, our anchors on the at the center, sorry, and our CTA button on the left side of the navbar. Now the second one is going to be this. We're just going to have logo on the right and our anchors on the left. Now, the last one is going to be something like this without the logo and the CTA buttons. We're just going to have the anchor at the center. Now, for example sake, let's call this is going to be the third design. It's going to be number three. This is going to be number two. And then the one without the logo and excuse me CTA buttons is going to be NavbarOne. All right, so we'll be using the navbars in our page when we're done creating them. So let's start without wasting much time. Now, before we start, I quickly just want to explain something because I also understand that this tutorial is not just about React. We're also supposed to look at basic HTML and CSS techniques. Now, to I usually use the nav tag for my navbars, and in the last tutorial we had, that was last year, we looked at displays, the different displays that HTML elements or tags usually have. We looked at the display block, we looked at the display inline, we looked at display inline block. Now, one new display we're going to be using in this tutorial will be display flex. Now, I'll give you an assignment to find out what display flex does. So, excuse me, before we start writing our code, first the navbar is going to take the full width of the screen by default. Whether it's display block or display flex, the nav element will take by default the full width of the screen. So it means that when we have the nav tag in our code, it's going to take the full width of your screen, right? And we're going to change the display to flex. The display blame flex is still going to have full width of the screen. Now, inside the nav, we're going to have another element, right? Or another content, and that's going to be a div. Now, inside the div, we'll have our anchors, right? So, nav, div, then anchors. I'll take it again. The nav, then inside the nav, we'll have a div. Inside the div, we'll have our anchors. And that's exactly what we are going to do in our code. So let's head right to our code. All right, so I'm just going to start my terminal. Okay, I think I'm already running it here. I'm just going to end this one and start again. So to run your project, you do npm run dev, and your project should start running. Now, if you notice, um, my port number is 3000. Yours should be 155176, right? Now, it means that I've changed my port number to from 5176 to 5176 or 5173, anyone, to 3000. And the way I did that is just head to your config.js, and what you should currently have on yours should be this, just this, something like this. Now, so to change your port number from 5173 to 3000, because I just like 3000. It's easy to remember, it's easy to type, right? Just add one more element, server, and then your semicolon, and then you see ports 3000, and we're done. Your local host is now 3000. Now, also you see this network here, this other ports. Now you shouldn't have it in yours. You shouldn't have it in yours. Now this enables you to view your project on your phone, right? So the first thing is your phone and your laptop has to be connected to the same internet. You can just turn on the hotspot on your phone and then connect it to your laptop, and then this should work. Now to do this, just head to your package.json folder and um, um, beside the vit under script, this script here, look for dev. Then under dev, beside the vit, just add two dash post like this and close it. Then you can end your close your terminal, open it again, or just do Ctrl C and rerun your project. npm run dev, and you should have two ports, localhost 3000 and http 19 blah 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 yada 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 like that. So this will enable you, once if you type this on your phone that is connected to your laptop, your project should open on your phone, and if you make edits to the code, you should see it, update on your phone. It's that simple. React is very cool. All right, so the next thing will be to create our very first component, and that will be the navbar component without the logo and the CTA buttons, like we said earlier. So inside your component folder, create another folder, call it NavbarOne. NavbarOne dot NavbarOne, right? Since we are going to be creating three navbars, right? So let's just quickly create everything together. So inside that same component, create another folder, navbar2, right? So inside this component, create another one again, navbar3, right? So inside navbar1, we're going to have a file called navbar.gsx. Don't forget, your components are basically files, GSX files, right? Just like we have in app.gsx, like I explained in the last tutorial. If you don't understand what I just did now, go and watch the last video to be clear. And so inside this navbar1, we're going to have our CSS. We just call it style.css. So it means that this navbar1 file will use this CSS. So think of this navbar1 as navbar, your HTML page, more like about the HTML, index.html, excuse me. But here it's going to be navbar.gsx instead of navbar.html, navbar.gsx, right? And then this style will be what this navbar.gsx will be using. Right, so inside the navbar1, let's create our components. So to create your component, just type SFC. If you don't know what SFC is, go and watch the past video, the last one. And we're just going to call this navbar1. The name here has to be the name here. So inside this return statement, now look at something. If I do nav div and under this div I have another div, we're going to have an error. That's because this return statement cannot take more than one element. It has to be just one element, right? You cannot have two elements under each other like this. You cannot have, let's see, even side by side, you cannot have like this. So the way to do that is to wrap all these elements inside a single element, right? Like this. Div, like this, sorry. Div, and then you can have as many elements as you want, but all these elements has to be wrapped inside a single excuse me element. So it means that this return statement is only having one element. Now the way to do that is instead of using div, because sometimes it can make your work complex, you want to do a design that you don't want to use div, just use a nameless tag. A nameless tag doesn't have any HTML property, right? So you can have as many divs as you want, right? As many spans as you want, as many tags as you want, as long as they are all wrapped inside a parent tag. I believe that should be clear enough. Right, so just like you said earlier, or just as we've excuse me said earlier, we're going to have a nav, right? We're going to give this nav a class name of nav bar one. Why are we using class name instead of class? Go and watch the other video, you understand. Then inside the nav, we are going to have a div. We're going to have a div. We'll call that links container, right? Then inside the links container, we're going to have our anchors, right? This will be home, and then features, and then blogs. Then you have, what's the last one, Seth? Prices. Right? Don't forget our navbar one will not have this, will not have this. We're just going to have this at the center. Right? So we're done with the HTML, right? Now, so let's assume that we're done with this component. I mean, this component is done. Now, so how do we use this component on our page, right? This page that we currently have. Now, this page is here. This is the page here, right? This is what is currently being rendered to the screen here. So the app is currently being rendered to the screen. So how do we use that navbar component inside our app page, right? So just come here, right? I'm just going to scoop this out and put a nameless tag. You should understand why I'm doing that by now, right? I will say nav bar one, right? I will close it. It's going to be a self-closing tag. Now, if you notice, it imported this navbar one from navbar one slash navbar, right? That means that this navbar one is inside this file navbar that is inside this folder, that's inside this folder. It means that it is importing this from this that we just created. So the name here corresponds to the name here, right? So by importing this out here, this can be used as a tag, right? So that is how we use our components or a component inside a page. Now, so if you check it in the browser, you should have something like this. Can you see? Features, home, blogs, prices. But we've not styled it. So let's style it. And we should be done. So I'm just going to close all this. And then I'm going to split my screen. So I have HTML one side, right? And I'll have CSS on the other side, right? Oh, sorry. I'm going to have navbar here. And then I'm going to have CSS here. Now, one very good thing about React again is that React affords us to style our HTML the same way it is arranged in our HTML. I mean, it allows us style our elements the same way it is arranged in the HTML. Now, if you notice, just like we said earlier, the div link container is inside the nav, right? And the anchors is inside the link container. So it means that I can simply come here and say, don't forget, this corresponds to class, right? So it means that we're going to be styling the same way we style it in normal CSS, right? So we'll say dot navbar. If this were to be ID, right, this would have been hash navbar. The same thing. So, but we're not using ID, we're using class name. So I'm just going to copy this name and say dot navbar, and I'm not going to give it width because the width is already 100%, but I'm going to give it background color so you see it. Background color red, so you see it here that the background color is already red. Coming. Now the reason why we are not is not shown here is because we have not linked our CSS to our GSX, our component here. So the way we do that is by importing it. We'll say import, right, style dot CSS. Now why am I using one dot and forward slash dot forward slash? Why not two? Find out assignments. Right, so we have imported the CSS. Now you should see it, right? Can you see that it's now red and it's full with 100%. Now the second thing I want to do again is to give you some padding. Padding is space at the top, at the bottom, at the left, at the right, Now I'm just going to use 30 pixels and you should have something like this, right? 30 pixels here, 30 pixels up, 30 pixels down, and then 30 pixels here. Here. So that's that about that. Now, so we're done. Now, don't forget the display has to be flex, not flex box, but flex, right? You shouldn't see anything. You shouldn't. Now, so don't forget inside your nav, you have your link container. So I can say inside my nav, right? In my CSS, I can style my links container, right? Instead of the normal way of bringing your link container outside the nav, right? You can map it. It's called CSS mapping or class mapping, right? So the same way I arrange it here is the same way I can style it here. Inside my navbar, I have my links container, and inside my links container, I can simply style my anchor. That's all. But before we start the anchor, let's start the link container, itself. Now, the first thing I want to do is to don't forget that the anchors are inside the link container. Let me give you background color so you see it. Background color white, right? So this is the link container here inside. Now, so the first thing I want to do is to space the anchors. The way I do that is by first of all changing the display to also flex, right? Now, by changing the display to flex, it gives me the ability to use another property called gap, right? So I can say gap 30 pixels. So it will give a gap of 30 pixels, to the anchors like this. Can you see? So they now have a gap of 20 pixels. So we can increase it to like 50 pixels. So if I scoop out the background color, you should have something like this, right? So we're done. Let me return the background color back so everything stays clear. Right, so to move this to the center, before we move it to the center, let's first of all style the anchor in itself. Let me remove the background color so you see it well. So I want to remove the underlining from the anchor. So inside the link container, I can say anchor and I'll say text decoration will be none. Let me increase the font size to 1.1 realm. Find out why I usually use realm for my font size. Find out why. And I'm going to just give it a little bit of padding space around the anchor. I'm just going to do 1 px or maybe 2 px. Okay, let me use 5 px, right? So now I have some spacing around the padding themselves. Let me just reduce the gap a little bit to like 40 since I already have padding there. Right, so I'm done. Let me give it a color of ash 222. Ash 222 is like a grayish black, and you should have this here. So let me return the background color to the link container. So you should have something like this. So I want this entire link container to be at the center. Now the way to do that is to say justify content. You go back to your inside your navbar, right? Let me close this, right? So it won't be confusing. Let me close this, right? So inside navbar, we have link container. Inside link container, we have anchor, right? So it helps you with space. You don't have to, write CSS down, 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 down. You're consuming space, right? So inside the navbar one, we want to have this to the center. So what you just do is to say justify content center, and your content is center, right? So I can remove this here and you have something like this. right? Also, I want to remove this background color red because our design is white. Our design is white. It is white. So you currently have this. One more thing I want to do is to give it a little bit of box shadow, so you'd be able to tell that the nav bar is there. So I'll just do box shadow. Just follow my, not box sizing, box shadow. Just follow my values. 0px, 2px, 16px, RGBA 0.1, and then you have this tiny little box at the bottom of the navbar. So we're done with our navbar 1. The next tutorial will look at how to do our navbar 2 and our navbar 3. If you have any questions, we will discuss it this evening. So do something like this in your project. Create your components, right? Style it this way and use that component in your app page, right? Just like we are doing it here. So do have yourself a wonderful, wonderful day.